I do want to start by saying Happy Mother's Day. In the US, at least, we are celebrating Mother's Day, and I went and had a long distance connection with my mother on her front lawn and brought her a blueberry bush. So my heart is feeling that kind of joy and warmth of celebrating our families and those that nurture us. And also here in the US, we've been celebrating Teacher Appreciation Week. So I can't help but start by thanking our mothers, our educators, our caregivers. Thank you so much, and especially thank you right now. Thank you for juggling schedules, adapting curriculums, checking in, bending over backwards to track down and find your students in the various ways and to say, how are you? Because perhaps that's the most meaningful thing we can do for them right now, is make that connection and that bond. And no doubt you're also coaching them through real challenges and offering your warmth and reassurance and deep listening. And that is so needed right now. So thank you. Thank you for cultivating your capacity to be that way. Thank you for seeing the best in them. And thank you for demonstrating in this what human beings are capable of. The virtues, patience, generosity, selfless love, persistence, innovation, strength. So as you're listening and as we're moving into this time together and thinking of those that have cared for us, our teachers, our mothers, those that took care of us growing up and those that are with us right now, if we could just take a moment and imagine sending that gift of gratitude out to them. We're here because of them, and we're here because of you. So thank you. So this time right now is to honor all of you, honoring caregivers, honoring mothers and fathers and teachers and educators. Thank you. And this time is a place for us to come together to nurture and support each other. And that's why we've called it Connecting to Self while Nurturing Others. It's that idea of putting on our own oxygen mask, the oxygen mask for our soul, nurturing our own core so we can attend to others. And so today's event, I'm so grateful and delighted to be welcoming Neil and Jane Hawkes, dear friends of mine and colleagues calling in from across the ocean from the UK. And the session they'll be leading us in, we've called Accessing Our Essential Self, Enacting Our Core Values, the Essential Power of Values-Based Education. So before I introduce them further, though, I do want to give a little more space and context to the fullness of the work that we're doing here. Because a number of you perhaps are or are not aware of all the exciting ways that self-leadership is starting to move its way into school systems. So I'm going to start by introducing myself. My name is Joanna Curry-Sartori. I'm a mother of a 10 and 3/4-year-old. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm also the founder and executive director for the Self-Leadership Collaborative, which is an organization specifically dedicated to partnering with school communities to implement innovative approaches to social-emotional well-being that are holistic and sustainable and inspired and informed by internal family systems. So for those of you who might not know, just in case, internal family systems, or IFS, as you'll hear us call it, is a cutting-edge, evidence-based transformative psychotherapeutic model, and it's really a paradigm for living. And so that's what we're translating and bringing into schools, and we're watching such tremendous benefit in that. And at the heart of the IFS model is the understanding of self-leadership. IFS offers us the understanding and the tools to access our own innate inner resources, our calm, our courage, our confidence. And when we access and tap into that, we're in such a different position to be able to have compassion for ourselves, and then truly compassion for other people, for young people, for our students, for our children, and to nurture them from that space. So appreciating the amazing gifts of this paradigm of that IFS offers us, for many years actually, people around the world have been exploring how could we start to bring this into school systems? How can we translate it? How can we share it in our schools? And there's so many ways this is starting to really blossom now in different parts of the world. Here where I am in Connecticut in the United States, the Foundation for Self-Leadership has given us a grant. So we're actually piloting self-leadership as a whole school approach in 3 schools here in Connecticut. We have a highly respected university that's exploring the power of our work. And yes, we are continuing to do this work during the pandemic. We are connecting with our teachers and nurturing and supporting them in how they can connect to their students. And in addition to our work in the schools, hands-on, the Self-Leadership Collaborative is also focused on how we can come together around the world to share our best practices and our collective wisdom, so that together we really know we're being as effective as possible to give this gift of self-leadership, to integrate it in our schools. And so that's the spirit in which we're coming together on these Sunday afternoons. So this also is in partnership with the Foundation for Self-Leadership. And every Sunday afternoon in May, I'll be hosting a different friend, colleague, collaborator from around the world. And it is today that I am delighted, overjoyed, grateful, and thrilled to be welcoming Neil and Jane Hawks. Let me tell you a little more about them, and then I want to pass it over. So Dr. Neil Hawks is a well-known and inspirational speaker, educator, broadcaster, author, and social commentator. He's a popular TEDx presenter. Neil's thinking is having a profound influence on schools, but also more widely in society. Neil first gained international recognition when he was the head teacher in Oxfordshire in the United Kingdom. Here he worked with the school community to devise and implement a pedagogical system that would give children a transformational vocabulary based on values such as respect, tolerance, humility, and justice. The school community found that children were empowered to be self-leaders with an active ethical compass that affected behavior, their thinking, and then, understandably, the quality of their schoolwork. So today, Neil's philosophy is spread into all aspects of society. It's known as values-based living. I love that, values-based living. And Neil has founded the International Values Trust and its educational arm, values-based education, which is more of the focus in what we'll discuss today. And his best-selling book, From My Heart, Transforming Lives Through Values, celebrates the success of values-based education worldwide. So welcome, Neil. And I also want to tell you about Jane. So Jane is a registered psychotherapist and director of values-based education, which is helping to transform schools worldwide, as I just mentioned. She's experienced and highly respected as a psychotherapist, and for many years, she worked as an innovative trainer and guidance counselor. Isn't it amazing the amount of their experience? Oh, supporting disaffected young people. You bring so much to the table, and my heart's just like, wow, grateful, thank you. So Jane now actively supports the theoretical development of values-based education and is one of its key presenters. She's also an enthusiastic yoga practitioner and teacher. I think we're gonna get an itty-bitty taste of that as we continue here today. In recent years, Neil and Jane have studied the internal family systems model, and they recognized how the understanding of self-leadership really profoundly aligns with values-based education and adds some additional insights and tools to support what's blossoming in the values-based schools. So together they wrote Inner Curriculum, which I highly recommend. It's a really clear, succinct synopsis and glimpse into the power of integrating IFS with their values-based work. So finally, most importantly, every time I have the chance to spend time with you, Neil and Jane, what moves me most deeply is that you walk the talk. I experience your compassion, I experience your love, I experience your dedicated to young people, I experience your presence and attention, and it is so contagious. So with a heart full of gratitude, thank you for being here, and let me pass it over to you. Welcome to our Self-Leadership in Schools community, and let me pass it to you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joanna. I could have gone on listening to you all evening. Well done. It's a great honor and a joy to be with this community this afternoon. Jane and I have been really looking forward to sharing with you in this expanding community. So very much a hi from me.
Yeah, and Thank you for that lovely warm welcome, Joanna, and everything you say about me, I see so much in you too. So I'm a great believer in that. It's nice when it's the good things we see in each other. But really, thank you for putting this all together as well. I think this is a great gift, and maybe the first of many trainings that we will all do together.
So, as Joanna said, my background is of a school principal in the UK system and a chief officer in various jobs I've done in education. But passionately, what I am is a teacher. I love teaching. I teach regularly now, and I teach adults, young children, whoever will come in front of me. I really adore it and always have done. A number of years ago, I sort of wanted to try out theories of education, what really worked in practice. So I became a head teacher of a school in Oxford again, and then worked out, was what I was saying, did it really work in practice? And we explored something called values. What is a value? Is a question I'd ask each one of you. What is a value? I asked that question of a group of first graders in a school in the UK, and I walked into the classroom and I said, hey everybody, what's a value? And a little girl, she stood up and she said, a value is a principle that guides our thinking and our behavior. And everyone went, wow, is that what a value is? And yes, so a value is what drives all our behaviors. We're all full of values. You can't avoid them. Some people say, well, I don't do values. I say, well, the moment you speak, we now then see your values. So everybody shares values. They're very important. So I'm wondering, the people who are listening to us this evening, what is the value that mostly drives your behavior? Do you ever stop to wonder what values really drive that behavior and where they came from? At conferences, I ask that question. People say, well, they came from my family, my church, my siblings, and a whole range of people you get your values for. But most people don't realize as they go through life that those values, that foundation, actually makes how you think and how you feel. And more importantly, it then determines the choices you make in life. So the choices you make in life, you can root back to the values that underpin the way you live and the way you think. And that means our behaviors emanate from that, which forms our character. In the United States, there's been a huge emphasis in the past on character education. All that then leads to our destiny. The reason we're all here today is because our values started us on that journey and creates our destiny. So I've been maintaining for 30 years or more that the most important thing we can think about are our values, because that creates how we are, it creates the leadership of a country, it creates everybody's. So we're all leaders. That's the other point, we're all leaders. And so what is values-based education, which I've been propelling across the globe for some time now? Values-based education is when you underpin everything that you do in a school, everything, with a set of universal positive human values. Universal values because wherever I work in the world, people will say to me, yes, these are values we can hold dear. Honesty, trust, responsibility, integrity, justice, these values. The issue, of course, is how those values are actually played out in practice. And that is where discussion and thinking has to go on at a very profound level. So at West Kidlington School, where I became head, we looked to see how we could help the children explore values. You don't teach people values, you find out about values, you explore them, and then you can imbibe them yourself. And I wrote about that in my book, From My Heart, if anybody wants to, there's the book, From My Heart, Transforming Lives with Values. Yeah, now it was interesting, I won't go on more about that part of my journey, but it was interesting when Jane was visiting a values-based school, she came out, and what did you say to me, Jane?
I just noticed that you could feel the energy of the school. There was the calm, purposeful, safe environment for children. And we hadn't met Dick at that time. This was, sort of 15 years ago or so. But there was something very special that was being created in this values-based environment. I put it down now. It was self-energy. And we all know that self-energy is incredibly contagious, that once the adults in the community started to feel that more secure, steady essence of being, then the children were feeling that too.
Yeah. So a values-based school focuses, as I said, on universal positive human values. Pupils then develop with adults what I've described as an ethical vocabulary. I think an ethical vocabulary is missing in the world. People in all sorts of powerful positions do not use an ethical vocabulary. So I think it's vitally important that we help children to think about values so they develop the vocabulary, which helps them to develop something that I've termed in the world called ethical intelligence. I believe that ethical intelligence is the most important intelligence to develop, because as a subset of that, you have emotional intelligence. You learn about relationships, how you get on with other people, how you don't always push yourself forward, but listen to other people. So ethical intelligence gives you the keys, the tools, in order to be a human being that we need for the 21st century, in my humble view. So you've developed ethical intelligence. But what fascinated both of us was that it develops self-leadership. Creating the values environment helps the self-energy to be nurtured, nourished, so that it expands. Dick Schwartz talks about his 8 C's. I've often said to Dick, yes, there are all the other words that are values words too, and I know he agrees with me. So by helping the children to nourish that vocabulary, you're nourishing that self energy, that sense of self, to allow it to come out to play, so that our parts aren't always dominating. And we learn about that as we go on. So self-leadership and positive character traits are formed. And what we are finding in the hundreds now, if not thousands, of values-based schools worldwide, is that the children and staff buy into a new universal narrative. Can you imagine, everybody, a world where everyone speaks the values of a universal positive human values? If the world's leaders were talking in that way, if the world's leaders were not interested in power and dominance, but in actually enriching the whole of humanity. I've been across the world so many times. My biggest learning is that we're all the same. We all share consciousness. We all download consciousness individually, but every one of you is the same as me, and I'm the same as you. And that's a very humbling, I think, experience. And I think it's time now to do something that's really important in a values-based school. We have 7 pillars in a values-based school, 7 pillars, 7 big tools. And one of them is the ability to pause, to be self-reflective, to take time. So I'm now passing over to Jane to lead this school community, this huge community, in a moment of pause to be.
Okay, so I'm just going to invite everybody to really feel yourself sitting comfortably wherever you are. Maybe put everything down, either just soften your gaze, or if it's comfortable for you, close your eyes. And just begin to notice your body and the physical sensations that may be there as you sit quietly with your spine beautifully straight. Feel yourself well supported. And just for a moment, just be aware of your physical body. And just maybe take your breath to any parts of your body that are either feeling a bit tense or have any other sensation there. Just allow yourself to notice. And now be aware of any activity that may be going on in your mind. Our minds are constantly busy. And learning to notice what's going on is a phenomenally beautiful thing to do. Maybe again, see if you can take your breath to your mind. Just acknowledging whatever's going on in there. Maybe you're aware of some emotion or sensations that are happening in your body as well. And see again if you can just touch these lightly with your breath. Just acknowledging that you're noticing that. And now begin to focus on your natural breath. Just noticing how you're breathing in this moment. Your inhale and your exhalation. And maybe as you breathe, you'll begin to notice the subtle pauses just at the end of every inhalation and at the end of every exhalation before your body naturally allows your breathing process to continue. And see if you can begin to expand your inhalation. So you're breathing deeply, maybe noticing the rise of your abdomen as you breathe in, and its gentle fall back as you exhale. Just seeing if the rhythm of the inhale and the exhale are balanced. Maybe on your next inhalation, see if you can really breathe deeply and feel not only the expansion of your abdomen, but the expansion of your chest too. As you breathe in your life force, the vitality that fuels your whole body through the air that you breathe. And noticing that as you focus on your breath, an awareness of the inner spaciousness that lies within you. And as we find that deep inner spaciousness, that huge spaciousness, we begin to form a stronger connection with that innate essence within each and every one of us, our self energy. So just taking a few more deep breaths. Just noticing the spaciousness that's within you right now. And then just let your breath be natural again, your normal breathing rhythm. Bring some awareness back to the physical chair that you're sitting in, feeling your body supported there. Begin to have an awareness of the space that you're in, maybe some of the noises that might be part of the room that you're in right now. And when it feels right for you, please just gently open your eyes and be back in this amazing webinar.
Thank you, Jane, for that. We've been exploring in schools lots of ways of helping children to take what we call pause to be regularly. I believe that if we, every few minutes, every hour or so, just to take a pause, to visit the internal, just to do a body scan, a mind scan, how are we at the moment? And then when you come out, your interaction, your connections with other people are then more likely to be accurate. So we have some things we teach, don't we, Jane?
We have you may all have this already, a little chime bar. I'm not going to ding it because it's a bit tinny through the internet, but in schools, quite often children know that when the teacher hits the chime bar, they just stop whatever they're doing. They literally pause, go inside, do a little mini reflection. And then when the teacher hits the chime bar again, they know that it's time to continue with their work. So just a simple way of helping children realize that all of us, that sometimes in taking that pause, we benefit so much. Yes. We take regular pauses.
And it gives children access into developing their own self-discipline. Most school systems are based on 19th century models which were colonially exported, regrettably, by us in many ways. And those systems are out of date, but unfortunately, most teachers learn by the experience of the teachers who taught them. And we perpetuate discipline systems, for instance, which are quite inappropriate. Don't have a discipline policy, have a relationship policy. So that it just changes the whole flavor of things. So pausing to be and brain breaks, as we call them, is so important. Next, Jane.
Then you may well have seen something like this. We call this our pause bottle now. It is literally just a bottle of water with glitter in it. And it really is a beautiful representation for any of us of what it's like when we're overwhelmed. When in IFS terms, we're flooded with something that is so big. And often children will come in from the playground and there's plenty of these bottles in values-based schools. They'll grab one of the bottles, they'll shake it up and they'll pause with it, just allowing their little inner worlds to calm down. So a lovely technique. And please, adults need them too. We've been in secondary schools where all the teachers have made one. And one of my colleagues, who's a dear psychotherapist like me, been reading our book recently, said to me, Jane, I need one of those bottles too. So maybe we all need them.
We all need them.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we met this character called Dick Schwartz, didn't we?
Yeah, it must be 8-9 years ago now. Neil and I were at a massive conference with people from all over the world who were seen to be doing something about the global spirit of humanity. Were invited to share their ideas. So Neil was sharing his values-based education work and Dick was sharing internal family systems theory. And you and Dick just really got on so well. And so Neil actually said to me at the end of the conference, you must speak to this guy, and Dick, you must speak to Jane, because I was a psychotherapist too. And for those of you who are in training as therapists, I had the experience of knowing nothing about the theory, but working with Dick, he gave me a therapy session. And I was just amazed at how he went so quickly to such a core part of my story and the struggles that I had. And so what an introduction to IFS for me, it really was. And at that time, Neil and I were already planning our book, this little book called The Inner Curriculum. And we knew we were going to put some sort of psychotherapy in there because I'd said to Neil for a while, teachers in values-based schools are doing a great job, but we need to help them really have a language to describe and understand their own inner world and something that's easy for the children. And when we found Dick's work, and I could just see, I was trying it out on our grandchildren, I could see how just, it spoke to me, it spoke to my heart. And as Neil said, schools are very used to having a school curriculum, but you know, the most important curriculum, we believe, is this inner curriculum, that ability to understand what's happening in your inner world and not be ashamed, you know, to really come alongside. And the inner curriculum for us is very much about IFS, but also about a really good understanding of how the brain works for children. So they have that connection, they can understand what is so important about the brain. The deep wisdom of humanity. We're constantly reinventing a wheel that thousands and thousands of years ago people knew. And then also really recognizing the knowledge and the skills of a teacher, not just to teach information, but their knowledge of children and development. And that's why it felt so positive to give them a language that makes so much sense to both their own inner world and the world of the wonderful students, children that they work with.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. A little bit of theory now, which I hope you will find helpful. I believe, my own belief, it may not be yours, but I believe that the essence of us is very positive as a human being. We wouldn't have survived as humanity if we hadn't had, for instance, the facility of cooperation. And so we have innate values within us. And that essence of us, that self-energy, sense of self, is deeply within each one of us. But as we come into the world, we're born into families and situations. And as we're in those families and situations, we have to adapt. So parts of our personality have to crop up to handle the situation. And so in my situation as a little boy, I remember that the way I got noticed was because I was very good at hoovering the house. I would go along with the vacuum cleaner and hoover away. And so Mum and Dad said, Neil, that's wonderful. So I had this very strong part that came out, this aspect of my personality, because my brother was the opposite of me. He got noticed for being the opposite. So I got noticed for being nice Neil. So this strong aspect of my personality developed. And I've just watched so many different aspects of children develop as they've gone through school systems. They find they have to survive. You know, there's a bully here, so how do I survive against the bully? So we develop aspects of ourselves which Dick's philosophy talks about: managers, firefighters, exiles, and the rest. So each layer of us, so the core of us is this lovely self. And then we build like shells around us. And that center is yearning to get out, yearning to express itself. And that then brings us to the role of the educator or the parent or the community worker, the social worker. What's our role? Our role is not to see the child's parts. When the child is acting up in some way, I've seen so many adults, they mirror the child's behavior. So the child is losing it, so they start to lose it. Don't you talk to me like that? And then the argument starts. And so what I say to educators, because that's my field, but increasingly people in industry, politicians, others, we must respond to each other from self. Self cuts through all those layers of parts and connects with the real center of us, that real self. So that's why it's so transformational, such incredible news if we get into this. And it's all about relationships, isn't it, Jane, and connections?
When we were launching a few years ago our ideas, I was doing a workshop and a beautiful woman came in with a 2-week-old baby, and she sat at the back of the workshop, and I said, no, please come to the front. And she said, oh, I think my baby might cry. And I said, your baby is probably the most important little person here. The baby just was so secure on her shoulder all through the workshop. But it was just such a beautiful reminder of what this is really all about. Because if we get that secure attachment as a child to, it's wonderful, it's Mother's Day, you know, to the women and the men, those intuitive maternal instincts that can be in both men and women, those caring instincts that create that stability and that sense of safety for the baby, then we begin a world of secure attachments. And what I sense is that as children who have good enough parenting attached to their caregivers, they then also know how to attach to their inner world. And they're the luckier ones because they innately have resilience. But as educators, we can, and as therapists, we can help support maybe the ones who didn't get that enough, so that they too can feel that attachment to themselves.
I'm often asked, Joanna, what sort of people do you appoint as teachers and helpers in schools? How do you assess them? And I said, well, I just have one thing that I do. And they say, what is it? And I usually get people to look at each other. I said, just look at each other. I've been looking at some colleagues who are listening to me now, and I'm looking at you, and I'm looking for one particular thing. I'm looking to see, do your eyes smile? Have you got smiling eyes? I've always appointed people with smiling eyes, because you really do get the sense that people with smiling eyes are in touch with their sense of self, and they're not carrying around the world's problems with them, because the people I want with children are people that can work from self-energy, that can enable children to learn effectively, so that humanity can flourish. Because at the bottom line, that's what we're into. We're in this dreadful pandemic at the moment. It really does highlight that the globe is one family. How do we survive? How do we make this world sustainable? And I think it gives us an opportunity to really think, what sort of people do we want as neighbors, as family? How can we enable their self-energy to grow to such an extent which will create then, I believe, the systems on this planet which will lead to your children on Mother's Day, or grandchildren on Mother's Day, having a sustainable future. And that's the power of IFS combined with values-based education. If any folk want to know more about values-based education, then I invite you to visit the website, www.valuesbasededucation, or one word, valuesbasededucation.com, or visit my own website, which is neilhawks, or one word, .org. And I'd love to interact with you, and please, if you're in another country, once lockdown finishes, Jane and I love visiting, so bear that in mind. Joanna, it's been a thrill for me to talk. Jane?
Yeah, no, it's been a great opportunity to, love to hear some other people's thinking and things too.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Joanna.
Thank you both so very much. Wow, there's so many nuggets that I'm kind of carrying with me. I was really just struck, Neil, with when you were saying about the smiling eyes, because during this time, I think those of us that work with young people appreciate the incredible significance that each moment that we're with young people, we're mentoring and coaching them about how to face challenges and stressors and to navigate this time. And it can feel almost daunting, especially when we have our own responses coming up. But if we can just have like, almost, I picture like being on a subway and there's something I can grab hold of. So I can grab hold of smiling eyes. I can grab hold of remembering and looking into that core through the layers of the dance of the parts of them that are showing on the outside, and always remembering that's their center, that's who they truly are. So I'm sure that everybody who's with us is also carrying with them many precious nuggets from this time with you. And I also am tremendously impressed, because having spent time with you on a number of occasions, I know the depth of the work you do is profound, and your consideration, exploration of how IFS comes together with values-based education, that we could probably have days of meetings and dialogue, and you've done such a beautiful job of giving us a taste and a flavor of that. So I really, really appreciate that. So I want to acknowledge that we we did schedule for these sessions to be 45 minutes, knowing that many people have, their life is full right now. So I do want to just sort of make a few wrapping up announcements, and then if people would like, they can stay online for 15 more minutes just to kind of have an open question and answer with Neil and Jane. But I did see a question just come up. Yes, this has been recorded. And I want to thank Jason Malley, who's online, he's a shop teacher at Prince Technical High School in Hartford, Connecticut, where we're bringing the self-leadership model. And he's also a very experienced sound and audio and visual engineer. So he'll be packaging this for us. It'll be available on the website for the Foundation for Self-Leadership. And I'll also put a link there where you registered for this on the website for the Self-Leadership Collaborative. So yes, this will be available. Yes, all of these Sunday sessions, as well as some surprise additional nuggets that Jason's working on, some other meditations and so forth. Next week, we'll be welcoming Seth Cobalt, who is multi-talented. It'll be wonderful to hear from him. He's a parent educator. He's a former head of school. He has expertise in organizational development, and he's also a personal coach. So has a really exciting lens into learning, and especially he wants to explore learning at this time, how we're creating safe and effective learning environments in our homes. So parents and educators are welcome for that. And additionally, I really want to take a moment to acknowledge the Foundation for Self-Leadership, who initiated this idea, like how else can we step forward to attend to our community? And the IFS community includes people from many different perspectives and professional domains, and appreciating the relevance of this model at this time. So I want you to know, in case you don't, that the Foundation for Self-Leadership is a public charity dedicated to advancing emotional and relational healing and well-being through IFS. And so if you do want to learn more about that, or to donate and support the amazing work that's happening through the foundation, you can go to foundationifs.org. So with that, I want to thank you all so very much for taking the time to join us. Thank you, Neil and Jane, for sharing your wisdom, your heart, your skill, your expertise. I hope this is the first of many meetings of this sort that we can have to continue sharing and collaborating how we can lead from self together during this time and ongoing. And so I'll make that the formal wrapping up, but for anybody who wants to stay online, I want to welcome you to share questions in the chat section, if you would like. There's thank yous coming in as well, which I really appreciate. Let's see if I can open that up. So let's see if there's questions. We have thank yous and applause. There needs to be an applause icon. That's fantastic. Thank you, Tricia. I think if you're good at digging in Zoom, then there is an applause somewhere, but click the bottom on the right. There we go. Thank you, thank you. Yes. So Neil and Jen, I hope you can feel and hear us clapping and going, yay, yay. Thank you for your enthusiasm, illuminating, reassuring to know our children are being taken care of with such hearts. Yes. And let's all just jump in to do that side by side together right now, as in any way we possibly can, any child we can touch. Yes. So any questions, any specific things you would love to hear about, or questions you want to ask Neil and Jane? Many thank yous. Values are what brought me here. That's beautiful. Thank you. Yes. You're also welcome to drop in the nuggets that you're taking with you if you'd like. Further things that you're appreciating, things that are resonating right now. Thoughts on working with younger children preschool age. Certainly that's a part of my work. Neil and Jane, can you speak to that? Are you also part of pre-K, part of what you're doing as well?
Very much so. Values-based education has a consultant for the early years, and I believe everything starts with the younger child. That's why I'm passionate about early years education. What worries me worldwide is that Some places are losing the emphasis on really understanding how young children best learn and how you resource that learning. I've seen around the world systems become too high school dominated, you know, with a curriculum that's not really appropriate for young children. Young children's curriculum needs to be holistic. It needs to invite them to be excited about learning, to be curious about the world. So the world has got too hung up with data and stuff like that. And I've written a lot about that. So early years work, absolutely important. And that's where the values-based work happens. One of my great learnings, Joanna, was that when I first started this work, I thought values work would be for children 7+. What I soon learned there was very young children really get it about values. It's almost as though the older we get, we start losing it. But the young child really understands. Their sense of self, I think, is there, Jane, isn't it?
Yeah, many preschools introduce a values vocabulary, the ethical vocabulary, and it's a really rich resource for children. And children who don't have English as a first language, it's often their first introduction when they go to a UK school is the ethical vocabulary. And it's amazing, even though the words are huge sometimes for them, they get them. And the experiential learning, I think children are much closer to being a friend, to being kind, to not seeing difference, to seeing everybody as being a lovely soul, really. They're much closer to that than we are often.
Totally agree with that, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I often think about how the patterns of behavior that might be unkind or defensive or reactive, they're not so deeply ingrained. They've been practiced for so many years. Those parts aren't so solidified. And so the younger we can get in there and to support young people experience different options, they can realize, like, well, I had this response strategy. This part of me comes up sometimes at home, but I just tried this out in school. My teacher helped me with that, and that kind of worked. And so they have so much versatility to still build and wire their brains and for those different response patterns to get encoded. And yeah, Neil.
Yeah, and can I just, it's a Teacher Appreciation Week in the United States. And can I say that I believe that the folk who work in school, in all the roles that are in school, are real heroes of our societies. They are doing a great job overall. I'm just in awe when I visit schools of how teachers, day after day, often with little thanks, do such a great job. And I wish societies around the world would really celebrate and acknowledge that teachers really are so, so important for the development of what we've been talking about today. So big round of applause if you're listening to me and you're a teacher. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, after this experience of homeschooling my son was saying recently, like, he too was appreciating the tremendous complexity and importance of his teachers' roles. And he was saying, I think they should get paid a lot more. He's like, I like sports and sports heroes and stuff, but I just don't get it, Mom. Teachers should make at least that much money.
But the difficulty is, you see, as I've always said, it always sounds, when I'm talking about values-based education, it sounds easy. It is not easy. And the difficult part is actually being the role model of what you're talking about. We can always expect others to show respect, others to be honest. But as I once said, if we point the finger at someone else saying, why aren't you doing it? Remember that 3 fingers are pointing to you. So we always have to be the change in the world that we want to see in the world. And if we all focus on our self-transformation, just think what would happen in a few weeks if we all focused on ourselves, rather than saying, if only the government would change, if only something would happen. But we are the change makers. And it all begins, I believe, in the school context by creating this wonderful community based on values.
Yeah, yeah. I think so. I'm going to take a peek. I think some more questions have been coming in. let's see. Do you see, so yes, this is recorded and will be made available. There was another question about, oh, Jane, do you work with young people psychotherapeutically? That was kind of a follow-up on what you were saying earlier. And how does values-based education find ways to nurture healthy, living, inclusive values? How find that balance between welcoming the child's values and making sure those values are healthy? Interesting. Anything bubble up?
I don't work with children under the age of 16 anymore. I mean, I work with adolescents as a therapist, but I'll go into school and work with children of any age teaching a little bit of mindfulness or just being with the children with me or doing things. And one of the things I'm really aware of, some of the head teachers we work with say, you know, the children begin to settle, they begin to feel safe in our environment here. But when they go home, I know they've got violence there, that they'll see their dad beating somebody up in the street, you know, that the children have to balance the two worlds in a way. And I think this is a huge issue. So we really look to having a community. The values are not values that the school are imposing on anybody. They're community chosen values, yes. So that there's a forum and the parents are invited in and we talk to them about what this is about. Invite them to think, you know, so if you could just choose one value that you would like your child to really know about and own, what would it be? And it's amazing, with a group of parents, you come up with a massive list and it's always the same types of words wherever we go in the world. So there is this sense of a collective knowing of what a good human being potentially can nourish to really be their best. And then the idea is that as the community really embrace the values more, then there's an opportunity for the values to go back into homes. And there's quite a few little projects that we do working with families because, you know, the parents, I don't believe any parent means to hurt their child. It's not an intentional thing, just their parts are sometimes just so overwhelming, they struggle. So if they're given opportunities to be with their children in fun ways and explore what these words mean, then we can start to help them nourish their inner wonderfulness too, really.
One thing I decided, I'm an educator by profession, but when I came across DIC and IFS, I thought Jane has been trained to level 3, is it? Yes, and is a PA now in the system. And I thought, well, I can't get up and talk at conferences about IFS unless I'm trained too. So I too have trained as an IFS practitioner. And I'm very proud of that. It was one of the most challenging times I've had because it really meant I had to uncover some of those parts and really, really delve deep. So I do recommend IFS training to anyone listening who may consider it. It's really helpful, even if you're not, like Jane is, a psychotherapist.
Fantastic. Thank you. So I think time-wise, we're kind of rounding the bend, and I appreciate you mentioning the aspect of kind of learning and training, because often what I find when we have these briefer encounters, we might also think, wow, I want to know more about that, and how do I learn more? And I appreciate that you shared the resources and how they can get in touch with both of you. I know I found you to be such an open door of generous sharing and insight and opportunity. And I also want to let people know that as far as we're playing with how we're all related, right? So here in the United States, one of the things we're looking to set up is how we can, in addition to working in specific schools, how can we train educators who are interested in learning more about IFS and self-leadership in the most efficient way that's really relevant to their practice and profession. So if you're online and you're interested to know more about that, you are welcome to join the mailing list for the Self-Leadership Collaborative. That's the same website where you registered for this event. A number of us here in the United States, now that we're doing distance learning, we're like, hey, let's go for it. So we're looking at how we can design some trainings for educators over the summer. That would be a further level and depth of training. It's not an IFS level 1 training, it's different than that. But again, looking at the application of these skills in that setting. So I trust that there'll be many more ways we keep collaborating, connecting and sharing our expertise and perspectives and models. And this again has been so rich, Neil and Jane. Thank you for your tremendous generosity, your steadfastness, and thank you for holding a vision of hope. It really is contagious, and it really is needed right now, and it really is possible, isn't it?
Yes,
Yes.
it is possible.
It is possible, yeah. So let's just finish knowing we'll stay connected, and we'll meet again in our shared dedication to our young people. So it looks like people are starting to kind of sign out and sharing their gratitude and their thank yous. It's always so sweet to kind of, I'm now noticing with the Zooms, kind of the linger in that space of, even though it's a chat, making the space for people to feedback. Thank you, yes, thank you. Sweet. And knowing that we've been with people from around the world, right? It's really quite wonderful. Yeah, this is a global community, and this is a global effort together.
Can we thank you, Joanna, again for hosting so brilliantly this evening.
Aww.
And, you know, you are an inspiration to so many of us. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very, very much. So with that, let's, we'll bring this to a close. I think we're on the button. It's 5:01 here in Connecticut. And what is the website for the foundation? If you look up Foundation for Self-Leadership or foundationifs.org, you can find out more about their work and this whole series. There's events happening for parents, there's events happening for people in small business, and very soon there's gonna be another series of things for caregivers and healthcare professionals. So wonderful. Okay, my friends, I'm going to end the meeting. Take care, sweet dreams, and much gratitude.